The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our ServiceNow series, where we interview the best and brightest of the industry to share their story, advice, and views on the exciting world of ServiceNow and digital transformation.
Welcome to another edition of the Alldus podcast. I'm your host, Ben Sparks, and today we are lucky to host our second session with Robert the Duke Fedoruk, also known as Just a Guy in the ServiceNow ecosystem. About 9 months ago, Robert and I discussed the up-and-coming skills gap on the horizon in the ServiceNow market, and in today's conversation, we'll be getting Robert's thoughts on how to set yourself up for success to win that gig or job of your dreams, setting yourself apart from the masses that we see out there in the marketplace. But we're going to be covering today personal branding, resume building, some of the coaching and product-led initiatives that Robert's been working on to support this gap, and also some top tips on how to win an interview. Getting a job is never an exact science, and we hope that no matter what your level and seniority, that you can take something from this. Robert, so welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ben. I'm just really honored that you guys would choose to speak to me a second time. I must have done something right the first time. I don't know what it was, but thank you again.
It was all right. It was all right. I just take it as free podcast coaching, to be fair, so you're good. So for anyone that has been living under a rock and doesn't know you in the ServiceNow ecosystem, can you give us a quick kind of high-level overview of yourself?
Yeah, what people think I am and do is got a little bit blown up over the past couple of years. Listen, I'm just some guy that is loud about his opinions, and I've been here for 13 years. I've done some cool stuff in ServiceNow. I've played a wide variety of roles, and I've always just been very open and loud and unapologetic in a good way, but I've just been loud and involved in the ServiceNow community and ecosystem. I have a certain kind of paternal love for it as something that I've been involved in at the start and helped build all these years. And yeah, that's who I am.
There you go. I've always seen you as the big brother of the ecosystem, putting your arm around it and telling it when it's doing something right, but also when it's not. On that note, it's probably a nice segue actually for myself. Let's talk personal branding. Now, I think it's fair to say that the Robert brand, if I can call it that, or Just a Guy brand, is one of specialization, and you're also, as you mentioned, extremely authentic. I'd love to know more about your advice to others who are looking to turn up the volume on their personal brand.
So why is a personal brand important in the ServiceNow ecosystem? I didn't really know that it was important until I had most of it assembled. People knew about me before I knew what kind of doors that could open for me. So that's how I would describe it, is that there are a strong personal brand will open doors for you. And I can't tell you what those doors are. It's just everybody's experience can be different. But in my case, I'd been on, back when I was doing freelance consulting, there were times where they were like, oh, that's Robert. We don't have to give him a technical interview, or it's a sure thing because it's Rob. Now, I would always encourage these people, please do technically interview me and be sure, but it makes a lot of things easier. If people recognize you, if you're a recognized player in the space, people have a lot less questions for you because they have an image of your in their head already of who you are. But in a traditional interview, that's what they're trying to get. But if you've got a strong personal brand, that's already gotten for you. Does that make sense?
100%. I think as we look at any brand, we all buy brands based on trust. And I think your personal brand allows you to be trusted in the market. And the more you're vocal about that, the more that resonates.
It's kind of a means to an end too, because I would say my end was already in play. Like, I wanted to help people a certain way. I wanted to help ServiceNow as a product and a company mature a certain way. So I was always out there, advocating certain things, making certain comments, bringing information to light. And then the personal brand kind of came after that. The people who are doing it now might have to plan the opposite direction. They might have to say, who am I in the space? Who do I want to be in the space? And let the action follow that.
I think you're right. You've got that personal brand of who you are, and then there's that personal brand of what you do and what you are good at. On that note, how can someone position themselves in a competitive market, and what should be the things front of mind for people as they're looking to engage with the ecosystem?
I think that question is a good one, not just for people looking to make a a quote unquote big personal brand, but also people who are just trying to get by, just trying to have a job. There was a time when ServiceNow was the specific niche. I do ServiceNow, that's my thing. Those days are long gone. The platform is so wide, you couldn't believe it if you said it 10 years ago. You couldn't believe how wide it's gotten, both in terms of the processes that are supported and the technologies that make up the platform. And now you're even getting whole like industry solutions, stuff that doesn't make sense outside of healthcare, something that doesn't make sense out of manufacturing, something that doesn't make sense out of aerospace, finance, law, whatever. So the combination of growth in those three vectors, product, process, and industry specific solution, means that there is just dozens and hundreds of niches emerging in the space. And so you can't establish a big personal brand. You can't establish a kind of very safe, dominant position in the job market without leaning into some of those niches. I'll give you a couple examples that aren't me. Like Phil Goes Deep out in the UK. His name's Phil Swan, but he's got this YouTube channel called Phil Goes Deep. And he's basically like GRC security and privacy as it intersects to ServiceNow. And he does these like hours long YouTube videos where he just goes way deep on the technology, what's new in GRC, but he's just very like, he's settled himself into that area and he's not interested in anything else. But that's what makes him rise above the rest in terms of visibility, because he's talking about something that nobody else is talking about, but plenty of people work on.
I'm not going to say easier, but more people can be more proactive about their brand because they're effectively, they need to make themselves an expert to a smaller population of people. Where I can imagine when you were thinking about your brand, you needed to look at how you're dealing with the whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
If people just pick off, you say healthcare, telco, GRC, ITAP, whatever it is, and just focus in on that and become an expert in that, they can quite easily promote their own brand. It will be self-fulfilling, I can imagine.
Yeah, it is definitively both easier and harder, right? Yeah. It's harder because there's way more people in the space and you can't just stand out in the job market for saying ServiceNow. It's not the golden nugget word anymore. So it's harder in that respect, but it's easier in terms of look at all the niches. If I'm like, who's the rock star for GRC security and privacy? Phil Swan in the UK. Who's the person who I want to talk to when it's like performance analytics and reporting? I'd go Adam Stout at ServiceNow. Who's the biggest personalities for like raw development? Chuck Tomasi, Andrew Barnes. Okay. But who's that for HR? Yeah. This is where you put the cricket sound in. Okay. Who's that for virtual agent? Mark Rathoff probably. But anyway, there are so many. Who's that person for healthcare and ServiceNow? Who's that person for aerospace? Who's that person for manufacturing? There's so many niches. And all you have to do, I'm just waiting for some person to just start talking about HR. You know what I mean?
That's how to set yourself apart in a competitive market.
That's right. And now, okay, yeah. Now here's the thing too. Like, I think there's a mentality out there. Tell me the steps so that I can become expert. And it's just, this is not a stepwise ecosystem. And I don't want to be the guy who's saying HR is the cert you should pursue because nobody's talking about HR right now. There are tons of people doing HR. There's just no like big single person brand who's I'm the HR person for ServiceNow. And if you're starting right now, you had better be HR savvy before you go down that path. If you want to be the HR mouth, the HR brand in the ServiceNow space, like, be HR savvy.
Once people have established themselves, I think as I look from afar, I think one of the things that I've always been very impressed about is how you're building constantly and engaging with your network. Talk to me about how people can be maximizing their network. And look, people have different sizes of networks, but how should they be dealing with it? Whether they've got 500 followers or whether they've got 5 million followers.
No, wouldn't that be nice? I think the key for me is know what tools are out there and build a platform that is yours. Okay. So ServiceNow invests a lot of money like in the ServiceNow community and encourage people to go there. But you have to have a platform other than that. Like I started a mailing list a while ago because I'm like, I want to write long content blogs, but I only want to write them for people who are like actually going to read them. So I started a mailing list, and let me see how big this can get. Like I'm at 1,500 people now. So it's just feed them content. And then it was YouTube. And it was like, with YouTube, what I wanted was, it was more of an artistic expression at the time. I was working in something that maybe I wasn't best suited at, and I wasn't able to be me. I wasn't able to say the things I want to say and explore the topics I wanted to explore. So YouTube was my artistic outlet to get that out. But what does that mean to you? It means that if you want a bigger personal brand, you've got to use these other tools to be the platform for your speech. YouTube, if you're savvy with video, mailing lists, if you're savvy at writing long-term content. And then you're not strapped to somebody else's platform. You get your own capabilities, your own audience. And that's when the doors start opening.
So, what other resources, so as we're starting to see the world come back to the next normal, whatever that ends up looking like, I'm sure we're going to maybe see some more kind of in-person SUGs, etc. come up. But what other resources are out there just quickly on a high level on what people can be doing outside of social media?
You mentioned ServiceNow user groups. Those are great. Go to them if you can. There's kind of nothing beats face-to-face networking, but building a brand is about building an audience that understands your brand. So I think where you say besides social media, I say not social media enough.
Okay.
So in the ServiceNow space, I think Twitter is dying out. There's not a lot of traffic there. ServiceNow community is a great spot. YouTube is an excellent spot. There's more and more people like putting their content into video form, which is awesome. And LinkedIn, I think, is a great channel for the content that you build. So I don't put my content on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn to push people towards my content, my YouTube channels, my mailing list stuff, my podcast with Corey Wesley, CJ and the Duke. And I don't think people take advantage of those kind of tools enough. If you just think about the power of a good thumbnail, I've had LinkedIn posts take off just because I probably had a cool thumbnail that caught people's attention enough to read the first line. But there's a dime a dozen ServiceNow YouTube channels where you go to it and you don't even want to look further into the video section because it looks so plain and uninteresting. But you could spend 10 minutes learning Canva, get a red hot thumbnail on the video, and then all of a sudden it's something that's like, oh, that looks interesting. It's your monkey brain, right? It's a shiny object. Oh, and now I've read the title. Versus something that was bland and utilitarian and uninteresting. Your eyes literally aren't going to go to the words. Sorry, I'm totally ranting on this one thing. All I'm saying is there is a wealth of social media tools out there that people aren't leveraging to their strength. And that's what I like. If you're talking about resources for building a brand, that's what I'd be leaning into.
You are listening to the Alldus Podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
So let's talk resumes. So considering ServiceNow is so niche and so in demand, I'm constantly surprised by the amount of noise and the volume of resumes that are out there. It's a bit of a paradox, really. So I'd love to hear what are your top tips for people who are looking to separate themselves from the pack. And because I suppose, but let's come down to brass tacks. Like, what's important on a resume and what's not?
Yeah. So I'm making a full-on video course about how to dominate the resume game in the ServiceNow space. And it also goes into LinkedIn and interviewing and networking. So it's more like, how do you go and get hired in the ServiceNow ecosystem? I would say that the average resume that I see in the ServiceNow space is far and away worse than any other technology specific resume that I saw 10 years ago. I don't think people are being taught what goes on a resume and how to make a good one. I think they're like, somebody skipped a generation and everybody's out there trying to figure it out and relearn what works. And so just for brass tacks, like you said, number one, resume length. You have to understand, like, nobody on this earth, not even Ben and I, want to read a resume. We want to get a person hired to do the work. Yes, but we want to read a resume. No. That is a crucible that we go through in order to get to the benefit of having a resource. And so if we're evaluating somebody for a job, we're getting 5, 10, 15, 20 people coming at us with resumes. And you're going to come at me with a 7-page resume? A 15-page resume? Like, this stuff happens. And I think, like, the first and foremost is length. More is not better. More is not better. The more you can express what you've done in a shorter amount of space proves that you're a better storyteller at whatever you're doing. And I have a better chance of getting the value that you can bring. If you're just giving me 7 pages of responsibilities you've held, I don't even know if you did those responsibilities well. I would say the other thing is just like what people put on the resumes is fundamentally, like in general, fundamentally wrong. They are listing out, they write the resume as they write job descriptions.
And I think job descriptions as well is a little bit to blame about that. I think there's probably a podcast to follow up on those. But I think as you mentioned, look, as we said before, right, if you're a specialist, your resume doesn't need to contain every single piece of the platform you've touched on. You don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's not give me everything. It's give me the stuff that is most likely to make me interested in you in this capacity.
So the work you're doing and the consulting and the product and the product you're launching, can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
So the product is a video course, and it basically just touches on everything that I have learned from reading all these resumes, but also providing one-on-one resume coaching. So as I did more one-on-one resume coaching, there was certain things that I found I was just saying over and over again. So somebody would pay for an hour and I'm like, but holy cow, I'm just telling you the exact same thing I told the last person. And they're nodding and thanking their heads like, yes, thank you. This is so profound. And this is going to help me so much. So I'm like, I just need to scale it better, because God help me, I'll put this whole ecosystem on my back and I will make this better, but I can't do it by having one-on-one calls. So the product is about helping as many people as I can in the ServiceNow space come up to speed on an awesome resume so that they don't have to worry so much about the ever increasing competition in the space.
It's a brilliant crusade you're on there, and I think everyone will see value in it. I think we tend to always lean on people who have 5 years experience onward in the ServiceNow community, but what would be your top 2 or 3 tips you could help to people who are very new in the space outside of pick a lane? What could you tell them to help them get a leg up in the ServiceNow ecosystem? Maybe that first or second job.
Outside of pick a lane? I think that's, it's repeating ourselves, but it is the most important thing. It is the most important thing. Pick a lane, get something that you're good at and do that. Understand what kinds of jobs are out there. Because I think the freshest of the freshers are like, oh, I got this ServiceNow thing. Now what? It's a sure thing. And you're like, what do you mean you got it? Are you a developer? Are you an ITSM person that learned ServiceNow? Are you a help desk person that learned ServiceNow? Are you like an HR person? Like, we don't know anything about you when you say ServiceNow. So not only pick a lane, but advertise the lane as well. The other thing too is it's a bit of a mindset thing. So I see a lot of people like complaining is the wrong word. There's like all this conversation about why don't people hire more freshers? Everybody's talking about we need more talent. How come they don't hire more freshers? Because buddy, hiring freshers was the move 2 or 3 years ago to deal with the capacity problems today. Hiring freshers today doesn't solve today's capacity problems. It solves tomorrow's capacity problems. So you're in line for tomorrow, but just be careful of the energy that you're projecting out into the ecosystem about if you're a fresher and nobody's hiring me. It's okay. Like, I get it. I will help you however I can, but don't project that energy out there. There's a reality that is and a reality that we want. And we want everybody to get on the train and provide value and have a great time with this ServiceNow thing. But the people who are delivering services, from the smallest partners to the biggest partners, have to fulfill the stuff that's coming in. There's people that probably have, you got $500,000 in services pipeline in the next quarter or two, and you need that money to pay everybody that you have on your payroll right now, or the ship sinks.
I have seen this amazing is the academies and the universities that we see pop up, and I know a lot of partners are doing that to bring through that talent. But you're right, if someone's got a project to be delivered, they can't put three people with 2 years experience on there, right? They need an architect. And
I'm going to make a shout out here. I'm going to shout out to GlideFast, okay, because their academy is awesome because they pay their people to be students and learn and go through the role plays and stuff. But even when you get paid to sit and learn for months, it's still a tough position to just say, okay, go make that person the person for this tranche of services. It's difficult. I remember my first ITBM implementation where I had not grown up in a PMO. I did not speak their language. They just loved my approach to the plan of the project. But man, If they didn't love me ahead of time, that would have been a terrible experience because I was not ingrained enough in the way that process worked, even though I knew exactly how the tool worked. So it's not a question of hire a fresher, receive value. It's hire a fresher, invest in them. A year or two later is when you start getting the real value. But how do we get that? How do we get the freshers from here to there? And I would say again, pick a lane. Make sure it's a lane that you have some familiarity with. If you are like a help desk person, go to the customer service management app. Know about customer service. If you're a monitoring person, go into ITOM. If you've worked in HR systems before, go for the HR service. And it gives you more velocity other than trying to learn quote unquote ServiceNow, the whole thing, the big thing. You never will.
So we're going to come on to interviews in a moment, but it's something that I know is a bit of a topic out there in the market, which is certifications. So what's your view on certifications? Quick fire, 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah, you got to get them now. Again, back to that whole, there's the world the way we wish it would be and the world that is. The world I wish is that certifications came at the end of an established, credible years of experience. That's what I wish certification meant. But today, most of the hiring is being done at partners, okay? And the partners need a token of credibility to pass to their audience to say, yes, of course we know SecOps. We have 5 SecOps certified people. So you can't avoid certifications. And I know there's a certain amount of controversy because you got to pay for the courses, you got to pay for the cert. Yeah, okay. But there's people who take a double mortgage on their home to get an MBA in their 40s. Dollar for dollar, the ServiceNow certifications are a way better investment than, I'm going to go ahead and say it, 1/2 to 3/4 of college degrees.
So interestingly, people are not usually denied jobs at interview. And I say not usually, obviously this is a sweeping generalization, but if they're in the right interview for their technical abilities, it's not usually the technical ability itself that means that they don't get the job. It's usually a softer skill. It's usually fit. It's usually maybe even miscommunication, or they didn't touch on a skill set. So it's really more competency based issues. And I can't help but feel a lot of this is down to how people are approaching the interview versus what
100%.
their actual knowledge base is. Talk to me about the importance of storytelling in an interview.
Apply this to your resumes every bit as much as you apply it to your interviews. Okay. People want to be told a story. They want to be inspired, and you want them to imagine, wow, what if that person did this for us? Or even have them imagine, oh, we have that problem. Oh, this is great. We can finally get somebody to solve this problem for us. And it's the storytelling is the difference between this. I see this line like every day on a resume. Okay. Like, I worked with internal and external customers in order to agree on requirements. And then I built in ServiceNow with workflows and business rules and client scripts and UI policies, et cetera, in order to build towards those requirements in the necessary time.
I've seen that resume.
Boring, like you and everybody else. So why pick you instead of everybody else? Okay, I'll take something from my resume now. Okay, in less than 5 days, I redesigned a customer call center app that had been used for years. I saved $100,000 per period on their licensing fees, and I reduced the training time from 4 weeks to 1 week. Now, you tell me, do I understand how to build an app in ServiceNow? Do you care that I used UI actions or nested related lists on a form? Yeah, the blanks get filled in. Holy cow, you did what? And wouldn't it be nice now? Like, I was very privileged to encounter that problem and have the honor of solving that. Maybe not everybody has that yet, but that's how you should frame your stuff. Like in the resume review world, they call it the XYZ protocol. By doing X, I achieved Y as measured by Z.
And I think one of the things people could do is look up, there's something called the SOAR, I think it's the SOAR methodology, which is like situation, objective, action, and result. And I think if people tend to frame things that way, what was the situation, what was their objective, what actions did they take, and what was the outcome, it's a really easily fluid way to think about the structuring of that.
And unless a technical person is asking you to describe how you built something technically, if you're down in the weeds of the tech, you're answering the wrong question.
So that probably is a nice segue, actually. Again, one of the things that we see is people forget to talk about what they did, and they talk more about what the team or what the project was doing. And so what's your viewpoint on that? Obviously there needs to be a blend, but I can't help it for what their part of the job was.
I wouldn't even worry about the blend. We all work on team. Everything that we do happens in some kind of team context. So to say I worked in a team says almost nothing, right? And I would say this is not the time to be humble and collaborative. Like, this is not the time. They want to know if you can inspire and do the work and tell a story about the value you provided, because you will be on a team. So I would be very careful, both in terms of answering and writing on resumes, things like collaborated with, worked with, and how far you describe it, because it goes without saying. Just say the part that made you critical. The fact that you worked on a project to deploy ServiceNow, whatever it is, service portal, like, what part did you play? Like, you could have been the note taker at the project meetings. I don't know. So don't let them fill in the blanks. Paint them a picture so that they don't have to make any assumptions.
Love it. And I think I probably hijacked the point earlier on my saw, but how should people be structuring answers?
Yeah. So we talked about the XYZ protocol, like, by doing X, I achieved Y as measured by Z. But I think, especially if you're nervous, like, if you haven't done a ton of interviews, there might be a certain nervousness, and that's an easy place to misunderstand the question or answer the wrong question or get tied up in your answers in your head. So just put this in your mind. The most appropriate response to every single question that you are asked is to stop and take a deep breath, and then maybe even repeat the question back to them. And it gives you a few more seconds in your head to formulate a more, like, a better response versus just, winging it. It gives you a few extra critical seconds, and it shows them that you are very concerned about listening. Did you understand the question that was communicated to you? Oh, you're asking me to, yes. So stop, take a deep breath, allow yourself some time to think. It's even okay to say, let me take a moment to formulate my answer. I've said that 100 times in my career.
Yeah.
Sure, take your time, Robert. I sit there and I think about it. I think about it really hard. And then I'll usually, I'll have formulated a little essay in my head. Okay, so here's the 3 points I want to cover. Bam. And then I have a structured, thoughtful answer. Versus if I'd have just run ripshot like I am now, you get an answer soup.
One of the things that, one of the key questions or one of the key pieces of advice we give people when they're entering into, right, is it's about authenticity. And I think people sometimes, and especially early on in their careers, they see interviews as a kind of test that you need to score 100% at. And that's not the case. People are just trying to get a three-dimensional look at what they've seen on that piece of paper or that email they've had through from you. And I think one of the things that it's absolutely okay to say, oh, actually, I haven't had experience with that. Or actually, I was on the team that did that, but I didn't touch on X, Y, Z. And one of the things we are asking people to do is be authentic on that, but then also dig into it, which can be a bit daunting. But if you don't know a technical piece of, if you don't know an answer to a technical question because you haven't had experience, say that, but then say, however, this is what I do know about it. This is what I would do. And this is how I would go about exploring it if I was put in a situation where I had to deal with X, Y, Z. And that could be issue management. It could be a technical trait, because it just really, again, back to that competency side, shows how you digest problems and also shows that you're authentic and you're not trying to be everything to everyone. Yeah, I think there's a lot to take away from this, but I think, there's some really key points in there about structure, being able to show your value, be authentic, and again, it's not you don't need to score 100%. Actually, people probably get interviews that score less than 80%, but have shown the right traits that they have confidence by their future employer or future contract holder. Depends how it goes down, really.
One of the experiences I have with that is I usually get asked something about the CMDB, and I am not and never have been a CMDB person. And so when I get that question, I'll flat out say that, look, I am not a CMDB person. It's a very unique, special skill set and mindset. I don't have it. However, here's the 5 things that I know you should absolutely not do. But if I was on site, if I was wearing your company's t-shirt and I had to pull out a win on the CMDB, I would be on LinkedIn tomorrow talking to my man Shiv, and I would deploy my network in such a way that I would get this done, because I have friends that are industry leading experts in CMDB.
Exactly.
And now all of a sudden they're not worried about that CMDB question they asked you. So don't be afraid to admit up front that you don't know it. And like Ben said, say what you do know, or say how you'd figured out similar problems in the past. Like I had this great, I worked in the hospitality industry for a bit, and we had this new person coming on to manage some of the ITIL processes. And everybody was all worried. Oh, we got very sensitive stakeholders here. And can you manage sensitive stakeholders? Like they might be mean to you. And this guy was former special forces. So he's, look, I basically had to get people on my side and do the things that I wanted. And I couldn't even speak their language. I didn't even know if they were friendly or not. And I'm walking into their village and trying to get a favor done. So I'm not afraid of an internal stake. But all that to say, if there's something from your prior life that can speak to it, a similar problem in scale or category, talk about that.
And I know that the interview one, we could go on for forever, but the other thing I would just like to add is interviews should be fun both ways, and they should be informative, and it is a 50-50 interview. I think many candidates and employers have it the wrong way around. They think that it's the candidate's job to impress the employer, but not vice versa. It's a date. Let's call it what it is, a date, and you work out if you're going to be a good match for each other. And sometimes you're on, sometimes you're not. And I think it is gone are the days whereby the candidate shouldn't be interviewing the customer. Like the candidate should be asking the customer as many interview kind of questions as vice versa. And again, back to what it shows about you as a soft skill. It shows you care. It shows you're engaged in the opportunity. It
shows you can figure stuff out too. If I'm going to hire somebody to get in front of stakeholders, I want them to be able to ask intelligent questions of my stakeholders. Exactly. So ask counter questions as often as you can. And I just want to touch on one thing you said in there, Ben, about is it the candidate's job to impress? Look at what is happening in our ecosystem right now. There's just an absolute bottleneck on 2 to 3 year experienced resources. These people are moving all over the place, like from partner to partner, trying to find a good home. Like I would say now, for the most experienced and in-demand ServiceNow resources out there, it is up to the company in question to make themselves attractive and interesting to the talent.
And it's interesting that a lot of that just comes down to engagement. I actually saw a post on LinkedIn the other day. It was about swag, how much that cost, etc. And it was like a welcome email from the new hiring manager or the VP that heads that group, priceless. So I thought it was really, really true. It all starts at the interview, but keep that coming through as well. And I think that's probably a podcast in itself, that one. Robert, this has been great, buddy. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and speak to us. Anything you'd like to add before you call it a day?
Yeah, just check out my website, www.theduke.digital, and you can find information on the program we talked about earlier on the podcast.
www.theduke.digital, and I'm really excited about this new product. Like I said, we definitely have seen a gap there in the market, and I think the more help people can get on their resumes, the better. So you're doing a great thing.
I appreciate you letting me shout about it.
See you later, buddy. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.